got a timeline here of Bush v. Gore. Bush v. Gore is going to be one of the biggest Supreme Court decisions of our lifetime. Bush v. Gore in 2000 is going to stop the Florida recount. The Florida officials had a recount. They were doing it, but the Supreme Court of the United States stopped the recount, and therefore it decided the presidency. Now, Scalia, he's going to blame it on Al Gore, saying that Al Gore's stupid mistake was taking it to the judiciary, to the judicial branch. So it was Al Gore's fault, according to Scalia. And in a way, he's right, because Al Gore did take it to the court system. And then once the Supreme Court went ahead and decided against Gore, Gore conceded. He just quit. He just gave up. Al Gore could have taken it to the Electoral College. Al Gore could have, done something differently. He could have occupied the White House first. But the Electoral College was still coming up. So before the Electoral College, before Christmas, they went ahead and just declared Baby Bush the winner, and everybody got to go home and do some Christmas shopping. Now, there's a whole bunch of craziness to this thing. So you have 1,400 suppressed absentee votes in Florida. So in some respects, if the recount would have been allowed to take place, then Baby Bush would have won with the Al Gore plan, Al Gore and the Florida Supreme Court plan. So Baby Bush would have won if they went county by county, but if they would have done a statewide recount, then Al Gore would have won. So Al Gore points out that there's 1,400 suppressed absentee votes in Florida. So that's interesting. How many absentee votes never get counted? Then he said Al Gore during this for about 2 weeks, people, or about a month and a half, people are freaking out. Oh my God, we haven't decided who the president is after a month and a half. This isn't the closest presidential election ever in history. We had an election in 1876, we had an election in 1800, which were closer, and we had an election in 1824 was so close that it went past the Electoral College into the House of Representatives. So we'd had some super close decisions before, super close presidential elections, but they never went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court never decided it. So, some crazy things. Al Gore said that if you count all the votes, that removes the cloud from the presidency. So, the Supreme Court is going to say count first, and then rule upon the legality afterwards. That's not a recipe for producing election results that have the public acceptance democratic stability requires. So, yeah, Scalia was very partisan, and then Al Gore accepted it. So, ultimately, if Al Gore hadn't accepted it, then it would have gone farther. But because Al Gore concedes, then what can we do at this point? Even if the Supreme Court was wrong, Al Gore gave up. And it wasn't the first time he conceded. He had a concession earlier, and then he retracted his concession. He offered the statewide recount to Baby Bush, but Baby Bush rejects it. What the fuck is going on? He is asking his rival if he could do a statewide recount. Hey, rival. Well, meanwhile, the rival's just like, filing this lawsuit and that lawsuit, trying to grind them into dust, and ultimately, so Gore, retracts concession. B.V. Gore stopped the Florida recount. Let's listen to Michael Dukakis, just his speech. He's going to give some kind of speech about, how he's a loser. So 1988, Papa Bush is going to beat Michael Dukakis.
Kay and I and our family can't even begin to express our gratitude to you and to hundreds of thousands of people like you across this country who have given so much to us and to the American people in the last 18 months. Just a few minutes ago, I called Vice President Bush and congratulated him on his victory.
These concession speeches, it's supposed to bring, national unity. Even Stephen Douglas conceded to Abraham Lincoln. And it does bring national unity, right? Because if people keep on dragging this out, then the country gets divided. But if one person concedes behind the other person, but that's only if they're the winner. And then a real fighter, keeps fighting just for a month, 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it takes. So Michael Dukakis is sitting there talking to a group of supporters. It was going to be a party. It was going to be a nice rally. You could hear the crowd. The crowd's excited. The crowd's excited. They want to hear what Michael Dukakis has to say, right? And what does he have to say? Well, the person that I've been saying is a piece of shit for the last 6 months, that's the person we're going to back right now. And I don't give a damn if you're happy about this or not. Why do the concession speech at the rally? You know what I mean? Like, just a little quick tweet, okay, I didn't win, you know, c'est la vie. That's my concession speech on fucking Twitter. But to get my face there, my supporters, and then essentially a whole room is just awkwardly quiet, the whole concession speech it's humiliating and it's embarrassing, and the Democrats have done it over and over again. It's almost like they can't wait to give their concession speech. It's like, damn, good thing I didn't win this thing. I might have actually had to govern.
And I know I speak for all of you and for all the American people when I say that he will be our president, and we'll work with him. This nation faces major challenges ahead, and we must work together.
So he's sitting there saying that he knows what, everybody believes this. We all need to work together. So everybody, that room didn't believe it. That room hated Papa Bush, George H.W. Bush. I think he said Governor Bush earlier. So he's like, I'm going to say what the whole world believes, and it's the opposite of what anybody believes. Let's hear it again, because, they boo. They're like, boo, Bush! And he's like, oh, I'm going to tell you what everybody believes. They love Bush, and we're going to back him.
Just a few minutes ago, I called Vice President Bush and congratulated him on his victory.
Does that sound like love to you?
And I know I speak for all of you and for all the American people when I say that he will be our president.
I speak for you and all of America that you just booed, this guy that you just booed, we're all going to get behind him, right? God, the whole mood of the room, I mean, why bring the room down like that? Just, put up some entertainer, and then he'll say, sorry, he lost you. If y'all want to go home, that's fine. There's not going to be a victory party. But if you're ready to listen to some music, just, that's how I do it.
And we'll work with him. This nation faces major challenges ahead, and we must work together.
I, in my court oath, no apology whatever for Bush versus Gore.
That would be pretty traumatic, to be honest with you. We're all at a party, we're all excited, and our hero goes up there and they're like, you know what? Fuck all y'all, I'm done with this campaign. I'm not going to go no farther. I'm not going to go to the Electoral College, no lawsuits. I'm quitting. I give up. I quit. What an inspiring message, right, to, give to your supporters. I quit.
Do the right thing, so there. Nonsense.
So this is Scalia on Bush v. Gore. He said, you know what? I made the right decision, so there. And everybody laughed. And then he's saying that people that think it's partisan it's a bunch of nonsense. It wasn't partisan. Why not Antonin Scalia?
What, that's political? Gee, I really don't want to get in. I mean, just get over it. It's so old by now. The principal issue.
God, just get over it, okay? So I went ahead and cheated and made sure one political party beat the other political party. Not in a fair recount or a fair election. I cheated. So, get over it. God damn, people want to say it's Nader, right? Ralph Nader, he's to blame. It was Nader. If old Nader didn't run, none of this would have happened. If Pat Buchanan didn't run, this wouldn't have happened. If, there's 1,400 absentee ballots. That's our soldiers overseas that didn't get to vote. And then the Democrats, 200,000 Democrats had voted for George W. Bush. So you want to get mad at somebody, get mad at Al Gore. How come 200 Democrats wasn't even loyal? Those votes aren't yours. Even Democratic votes wasn't Al Gore's. And Al Gore's going to lose his home state, too. He was not an exciting candidate.
The scheme that the Florida Supreme Court had put together violated the federal Constitution.
So Scalia just said that the scheme that the Florida Supreme Court put together violated the Constitution. So essentially, what they're going to say, I think I heard Sandra Day O'Connor say that the state officials in Florida basically fucked it all up. So there should have been a recount, but they did, they had some sort of process and it was all fucked. And then So they're going to blame, well, it was clearly not constitutional. There were two main decisions with Bush v. Gore. There's two main decisions. One was about the equal protection clause, and then the other one was on the lack of an alternative method. So equal protection, something about equal protection in the 14th Amendment, and then the lack of an alternative method. So the Supreme Court of Florida had mucked it all up. They had this unconstitutional scheme. If they had an alternative that was ready, then they were ready to enact upon it. And it was voted on 7-2 that the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment was broken. So that part, that was near unanimous. But the second decision on whether or not they had a lack of an alternative method was 5-4. That's a split decision. Only by one vote was that upheld. So those are the two decisions on Bush v. Gore.
That wasn't even close. The vote was 7-2. It was Al Gore who made it a judicial question. It was he who brought it into the Florida courts. We didn't go looking for trouble. It was he who said, I want this to be decided by the courts. What are we supposed to say? Oh, not important enough.
Good evening. Just moments ago,
So that was actually a pretty defense there by Scalia. It's just interesting. What the hell were they thinking? Then the fact that he says, get over it. The whole thing about precedent is that this case is going to be, used when the recount. Jill Stein had a recount in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Bush v. Gore was an issue in each and every one of those states. So this is precedent. This is going to stay, part of American jurisprudence for quite some time. Get over it. If we could just, make sure, could we just erase it? If you erased it, I could get over it. But as long as it stays on the books and it's going to be the law of the land forever and ever, no, this is a bullshit case. Al Gore fucked up, but the Supreme Court didn't have to, kick Al Gore in the nuts when he was down. They could have suggested to him that he takes it to the Electoral College, that it's not the judiciary's, responsibility to make a decision. So Al Gore, the 2000 election was kind of crazy. Al Gore didn't campaign with Bill Clinton because of the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And guess what? That whole Republican impeachment over a blowjob worked. It worked. The whole, country knew that he was getting blowjobs in the Oval Office, and so therefore Al Gore didn't campaign with Bill Clinton, and then guess who won? The Republican. So to sit there and say that impeachment doesn't work, that's the thing with Republicans. They are such ruthless pieces of shit, and the Democrats are such weak-willed, fucking impeach. Put impeachment proceedings, if at the very least, just for the political theater of the thing. Because look what happened in 2000. Yeah, they impeached, Bill Clinton over some bullshit, over a blowjob, and it was bullshit, and they shouldn't have done it. But he didn't, it wasn't a Democrat that was in office after 2000. So in the long term, they might have lost because it made Bill Clinton look better, but he didn't get, the Democrats didn't get reelected. So here's the timeline. This is between November 8th, 2000, and December 13th. November 8th, 2000 is going to be the election. December 13th, and 2000 is going to be when Al Gore and Joe Lieberman quit. So November 8, 2000, this is 48.8%. Baby Bush is going to win in Florida. And he won by 1,784 votes, so just under 2,000 votes. That triggers an automatic recount. Let's listen to a little bit of Al Gore concede.
Spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd President of the United States. And I promised him that I wouldn't call him back this time. I offered to meet with him as soon as possible so that we could start to heal the divisions of the campaign and the contest through which we just passed.
Oh, fantastic, Al Gore. So he went ahead and quit, right? Hey, I went ahead and made my concession speech so we could bring the country together. I quit. I give up. Yeah, what a great champion, Al Gore. So the recount was finished at November 10th, 2000. So there was a recount, an automatic recount was triggered. Bush only won by 1,784 votes, not a majority, a plurality, 48.8%, so under 50%. The recount comes out, only one machine and one count wasn't counted, so all the rest of them were counted, but Baby Bush only won by 327 votes now. That's a major drop in votes from 1,784 down to 327, so that's, more questions There's more questions. So now Al Gore is going to go to Florida Supreme Court December 8th, 2000. Florida SCOTUS in a split 4-3 decision ordered a statewide manual recount. So December 8th, 2000, 4-3 decision. Florida's own judicial system says statewide manual recount, which is what should have happened. December 9th, 2000, the United States Supreme Court stops the Florida recount. And Scalia said you count first and then rule upon legality afterwards. It's not a recipe for producing election results that have the public acceptance democratic stability requires. The dissent, somebody wrote that counting every legally cast vote cannot substitute irreparable harm. Preventing the recount from having completed will inevitably cast a cloud on the legitimacy of the election. It does cast a cloud on the legitimacy of the entire Bush era. December 10th, 2000, the United States Supreme Court unanimously decided a closely related case of Bush v. Palm Beach Canvassing Board. So, November 8th, it says Bush won by 2,000 votes. November 10th, he only won by 300 votes. Then they say, all right, we need a statewide manual recount. Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that recount. You can't do it. Nope, you have to make sure it's legal first. And then he's like, what, you're going to count it first and then determine whether it's legal? Yeah, that's exactly what the fuck should have happened. Well, we're going to recount it first and then later on decide if it's legal or not? And he was like, no, it's illegal now. Okay, so now December 10th, 2000, they decided on Bush v. Palm Beach Canvassing Board, and then Bush v. Gore, December 12th, 2000. This case is going to be decided December 12th, so exactly 13 days before Christmas, 2 weeks. This decision was handed down by the Rehnquist Court, the Rehnquist, whatever that guy's name is. He was the Chief Justice, Rehnquist. In the circumstances of this case, any manual recount of votes seeking to meet the December 12th safe harbor deadline would be unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. That's the decision. That's Bush v. Gore. I'll say it again because it's that important. In the circumstances of this case, any manual recount of the Florida votes seeking to meet the December 12th safe harbor deadline would be unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. It's unconstitutional. Safe harbor. There's a deadline. What the fuck is it? None of this makes any sense. Okay, so December 13th, 1 day after Bush v. Gore, Al Gore, Joe Lieberman, they quit. They publicly concede. And even though it was better than a Hubert Humphrey's concession speech, Hubert Humphrey, he wanted everybody to feel happy. Hey, Nixon just stole the 60s from the Democrats, JFK, LBJ, and then we just gave it to Nixon. I want you all to be happy. And then Al Gore says, while I strongly disagree with the Supreme Court outcome, I accept it. Al Gore goes to the courts, and then when the court said that he can't do it this way, Al Gore saw no way forward, and so Al Gore quits. But the Electoral College was still coming up. The Electoral College was still December 18th. So the Electoral College was still a couple days in front of them. So they never went to the Electoral College, December 18th. So he's going to concede 5 days before the Electoral College actually goes to vote. That's when the real election happens, the Electoral College. But he quit 5 days before the real election actually happened. Go to the Electoral College at the very least. Democrats, you're a fighter. Go to the Electoral College, fight and scrape. You know, you got to fight and scrape in this dog-eat-dog capitalist society, don't you know? I mean, my God, that's how you have to live to survive. So you have to fight and scrape and get in there. I mean, this is the Electoral College, so let's watch the Electoral College. Let's watch American democracy in action. It's not the people who even vote to begin with. Why are we counting the people's votes? It's the Electoral College who actually votes on our presidents. Let's listen to Al Gore give up.
Almost a century and a half ago, Senator Stephen Douglas told Abraham Lincoln, who had just defeated him for the presidency, partisan feeling must yield to patriotism. I'm with you, Mr. President, and God bless you. Well, in that same spirit, I say to President-elect Bush that what remains of partisan rancor must now be put aside.
So that's fantastic, right? So essentially he's saying, you know, God bless you, George W. God bless you, baby Bush. God bless you. May your stewardship shine brightly.
In your view, the most contentious? What's the one that most people ask you about?
So this is some more Scalia.
Contentious? Well, I guess the one that created most waves of disagreement was Bush versus Gore. Okay, that comes up all the time, and usual response is get over it.
Oh, get over it.
The possible corruption of the American presidential Justice Scalia. Look at my court didn't bring the case into the court. It was.
So he's asking a question about corrupting American politics, and he just laughs, and then, you know, that's the accountability we can get out of our Supreme Court justices. Hey, remember that time you fucked over our country? The New York Times is going to declare that the rule of law is dead. After Bush v. Gore, now we know that there is no law. Laws don't mean shit. The rule of law is dead. That's what the New York Times declared with the decision of Bush v. Gore.
Was brought into the courts by Al Gore. He is the one who wanted courts to decide the question.
So again, we hear Scalia say it's Al Gore's fault. Al Gore brought the decision to the courts. He didn't have to go to the courts. He still had the Electoral College. He talked about Nixon and chicanery up in Chicago, but he didn't go to the courts. He didn't go to the courts, not Nixon. He settled it some other way.
I don't want you to think we'll continue the campaign right away, but
Hubert Humphrey, this fucking douchebag, this fucking weenie. 1968, right? You got what? Medgar Evers, bam, shot dead. Malcolm X, bam, shot dead. And then Martin Luther King, bam, shot dead. Robert Francis Kennedy, bam, shot dead. And then Hubert Humphrey, that's who the Democrats give the mantle. They pass the baton on to Hubert goddamn motherfucking Humphrey. So he couldn't wait to concede. Listen to, the words of the Democratic candidate in 1968.
It's like John Bill, you maybe ought to have a little rest. We intend to take some. We're not quite sure just what we're going to do with the next few days. We're going to stay out here in Minnesota. I haven't mowed the lawn for some time. And,
he hasn't mowed the lawn. Thanks for giving the 60s away, Hubert Humphrey. Now go fucking mow your lawn.
There still is a few things to do out at our place. Matter of fact, I feel a great sense of...
He's going to say relief. I feel a great sense of relief. Yeah, I bet you do, you fucking loser.
Richard Nixon thought that he had lost the election because of chicanery in Chicago. He chose not to bring it into the courts, but Al Gore wanted the courts to decide it. So the only question in Bush versus Gore was whether the presidency would be decided by the Florida Supreme Court or by the United States Supreme Court. That was the only question, and that's not a hard one.
So Antonin Scalia said either the U.S. Supreme Court is going to decide this, debacle in Florida, or the Florida, it's an American election, so therefore he says that the federal court has jurisdiction. Now, it's a per curiam decision, which means it looked like it's unanimous, per curiam, and then only one person writes it. They don't write their name, so it looks like the entire court issued this opinion. So this Bush v. Gore is per curiam. The court ruled that the use of different standards of counting in different counties violated the Equal Protection Clause and ruled that no alternative method could be established within the time limit set by Title III of the U.S. Code, 3 U.S.C. the 5, the little weird legal thing, 5, determination of a controversy as to appointment of electors, which was December 12th. And if none of that made any sense to you, it's a bunch of convoluted bullshit. They're just sitting there saying they have to come up with an alternative method. They have to establish it by December 12th, and they didn't do it in time, so, they went ahead and decided it. It's over. Bush v. Gore is over. Nope, they needed an alternative method. They could have just said, we're going to, count every vote by hand. Nope. It has to be, I guess, the whole thing is the Equal Protection Clause. And, again, this doesn't make sense either. The Equal Protection Clause just makes sure that the states protect each and every citizen equally with the rights and freedoms that we're all given. So the Equal Protection Clause, they're going to use equal protection by saying that the Florida recount, they were counting 4 counties, that each one of those counties needed to be recounted in the exact same way, in a nice, uniform manner, and but there are different voting mechanisms, different things, so, different shit for different people. On the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, the vote was 7-2. So when it comes to breaking Equal Protection Clause, nearly, most of the Supreme Court was on board, saying that, what Florida was doing, it was not, equal protection, they weren't protecting equally. But then on the second vote, that's 5-4. The lack of an alternative method was a split decision, 5-4. So, this is going to, give Bush the presidency. The Equal Protection Clause requires that each state provide equal protection under the law to all the people, including non-citizens, within its jurisdiction. And then somehow that meant that the scheme that the Florida Supreme Court came up with was unconstitutional. Now, there's several things with the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment is going to make all debts to the Confederacy null and void. The 14th, 13th, 15th Amendment are Civil War amendments. So all this is to essentially bring about citizenship for the formerly enslaved. So all the Confederacy, if you had any debt to the Confederacy, that was null and void. No Confederates could serve in any office in the United States unless 2/3 of the Senate and the House of Representatives had removed the disability. So that means no Confederates could serve in the federal government. If you owed money to the Confederacy, then that meant nothing. You fucked them over, good for you. Birthright citizenship is going to come from the 14th Amendment too. So everybody who's born on the U.S. soil, everybody that's born on American soil with very few exceptions are U.S. citizens. And it's just solely the right of the territory, and this is unique for America. But if you're born on American soil because of the 14th Amendment, and then there's going to be a Supreme Court case where they essentially said, yes, there's birthright citizenship. So if the parents are not citizens, then they have a kid on American land, that kid is a citizen, according to the 14th Amendment. Due process clause. There's also the 5th Amendment protects the due process clause. So equal protection, birthright citizenship, no Confederates in government, don't pay the Confederate back. Everybody has due process in America. You can't deprive anybody of their freedom and their money without due process. There's also a privileges and immunities clause, such as our many rights and freedoms. As a citizen, you get to maintain your privileges and your immunities wherever you go. So as an American citizen, whatever privileges and immunities that entitles us to, the state has to protect that. And then also equal protection. So essentially equal protection just means that black people are people too, and so they got the right to freedom, the right to vote, and all the rights that, white people have. So that's, that was the point of it, but it's been used to, it changes the Constitution substantially. Here's the actual Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the U.S. or subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the U.S. and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the U.S., nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So I got one more minute. The lack of alternative methods, so that's a split decision. The whole equal protection was not a split decision. It's per curiam 7-2, but on the lack of an alternative method, that was a 5-4 split decision. So Bush v. Gore allowed that the previous count to stand, as was previously reported by Catherine Harris, as Baby Bush being the victor of Florida's 25 electoral votes, which gave Baby Bush 271 electoral votes versus Al Gore's 266. There was one faithless elector in Washington, D.C. who had abstained from voting. So he's going to lose by 5 electoral votes. Media organizations said if the county-based system was used, which is what Al Gore had erroneously pushed for, if that was allowed, Baby Bush would have won. So if Al Gore would have got his way, Baby Bush would have won anyways. But if there was a statewide recount, Al Gore would have won. So not counting all the ballots the exact same violated the Equal Protection Clause. What a load of horse shit. Different counties had different voting styles. It's clearly partisan. Supreme Court wouldn't have got away with this shit except for Al Gore quit. He didn't even go to the Electoral College. He didn't even consider it. To December 12th, 2 weeks before, let's go shopping anyways. Who gives a shit? 1800, 1824, 1876, these are the closest elections in U.S. history. In 1824, it was the House of Representatives who decided the very close presidential election between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. So